Go ahead, take your best shot, motherfucker.
You pushed me into the lake.
Sometimes a horror franchise comes upon a great idea that is designed to do something special and give the audience new thrills that couldn't have been achieved before. When it comes to 80s horror, that was maybe a tall task. There was so much competition and content coming out every single year that a viewer could get easily confused and disoriented with what to watch and why. Think about this for a moment. Among the big three alone, there was a film by them released every year in the 80s except for 1983. That's a stat that blows my mind. Keeping up with each other and pushing each other as competitors was healthy and created better films, but the pace was simply staggering. Enter director Rob Hedden, tasked with taking Jason out of Crystal Lake and to the Big Apple. The question is, would fans travel to New York as well, or will they stay at the cabins of Camp Blood? Let's get down to brass tacks. In this Why You Hate video, and by the way, I've done several episodes of films that sometimes divides the fans and causes a great discussion for people on both sides of the fence. Check them out in the Why You Hate playlist if you haven't already, or if you're in need for some fun and a good horror discussion, check them out again. It's not going to hurt, I promise. Also, if you would personally like to help me decide on films for new episodes and much more while supporting this channel, join our channel membership program by clicking the join button next to the subscribe button. It's a member perk for our movie fanatics level and above. You know you're a movie fanatic. We all are. So as I was saying, I'm going to go over some reasons why fans have issues with Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, including multiple things that I know will be a strong debate in this community for the lovers of this film and the detractors of it. I will also attempt, if at all possible, to show how some issues might not hold as much weight as they seem. Also, I'll touch upon some history and behind-the-scenes info that gives a snapshot of this film's journey. So get ready to spend time on a boat for way too long, get chased through Vancouver by a very ambitious masked killer. Don't forget to finish your biology project because, well, just don't forget. Hype yourself up to throw 59 punches at Jason Voorhees that have no effect on him. And don't get choked up about environmental toxic waste. Here are the reasons why you hate Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Number 1. Director and Beginnings. Part 7 was a mixed bag for the fan base. It had some amazing moments and an interesting premise for the final girl, Tina. The stunt work by Kane Hodder, in his first outing as Jason, plus the makeup was and still is respected. But unfortunately, the MPAA truly neutered the kills and the overall vision that director John Carl Buechler had. This possibly sent the franchise in a direction that unfortunately spoke of desperation. Lar Park Lincoln originally wanted to sign on to reprise her role as Tina Shepard in Part 8, but she wanted a higher salary than what she was paid for in Friday 7. Paramount told her that their budget could not afford to pay her any more, and because of this, she turned down the part. Thus, Paramount decided to rewrite the entire script for Part 8 to take the movie to a whole new direction, which later completely excluded the character of Tina, as they decided they did not want anyone from Part 7 to return.
Bullshit!
It's truly one thing that Paramount did time and time again. They didn't see the overall positives of bringing back a character from the previous film, except for Tommy Jarvis, that is. After Rob Hedden's work on Friday the 13th, the series, in 1987 impressed executive producer Frank Mancuso Jr., Mancuso offered Hedden the director's chair for this film. He accepted on one condition, that Jason could be taken out of Crystal Lake.
There were 7 before, obviously, and they all took place in Crystal Lake, right? And so the first question I asked them was, does it have to be in Crystal Lake? Can I take Jason out of Crystal Lake?
According to Hedden, it was Mancuso's idea to send Jason to New York. Unfortunately, Hedden's script was drastically rewritten to take place mostly en route to New York on the cruise ship when Paramount wouldn't give him the necessary budget to film at all of the New York landmarks.
Production reality set in, and it was like, okay, instead of 75% of the movie taking place in New York, we'll do 50%. And then it was, well, we can't really do 50 either. So then the concept, well, let's do some mayhem on the cruise ship while they're getting to New York, and we'll make, maybe the last third of the movie will take place in New York.
The final film version barely resembles Hedden's original script. The studio confusion and bad decision-making is a huge issue with Jason Takes Manhattan, and I don't think many fans are fully aware of it. It's definitely something that isn't talked about enough. Another issue that was born out of constant rewrites and studio interference was that the original scripted ending featured Jason being completely melted by toxic waste and his soul finally being released. The studio changed it to him turning back into a child so that if there was a chance of a sequel, they didn't write themselves into a corner. In the end, this hardly mattered, since Paramount decided to not produce any more sequels after Jason Takes Manhattan didn't do well financially.
And you blew it! You blew it!
They sold the sequel rights to New Line Cinema, whose Jason Goes to Hell in 1993 chose to ignore most of the prior sequels, and Jason Takes Manhattan in particular. That movie also reinvented Jason as a demonic soul
Bullshit!
or essence that can inhabit different bodies
Bullshit!
rather than a corpse that is resurrected time and time again. I'm looking at you, the Hidden.
Policeman here. Something gets in his way, he kills it. Finds a body, gets inside, uses it to move around.
It is safe to say that Friday the 13th as a franchise was in the midst of an identity crisis. Sure, a lot of it could be attributed to the fact that this was the 7th sequel to a franchise that releases movies almost yearly. Burning the candle at both ends doesn't work. It never has. Number 2. Characters. Throughout this franchise, the characters have been integral to the audience devotion and success of the movies. Each previous film has characters that if you named at a convention or place with fans, there would be huge applause. Part 8 had characters that in general didn't have as much range. Part of that is the script and being handcuffed to the boat with the anticipation of trying to get into New York for the finale. Final Girl Rennie is in the mold of the prototypical final girl like Alice or Trish, but because of her backstory of fear, she doesn't get much time to shine until the very end.
Rennie had a special connection to Jason because she saw Jason under the water. My character is terrified of the water, but she decides to go on the boat anyway. One by one, the classmates are killed off or missing.
Interestingly enough, Pamela Anderson and Elizabeth Berkley both auditioned for the role of Rennie, which ended up going to Jensen Daggett. The co-lead Sean is okay, but also is not given much to do in the film. Tamara plays the stuck-up sexy girl and has moments.
Hey,
Her kill is probably the second best on the boat,
hey.
but she also wasn't given much to do other than that. Julius and his boxing moment, period. Peter Mark Richmond was the only actor that was given enough to do, and of course as Charles, he was the foil of sorts. I think his backstory with Rennie should have been explored or layered a bit more. JJ was awesome, the guitar was awesome, her death was too short, but awesome. Kelly Hu as Eva.
It is not in the file. It is not.
Now the disco scene where Eva is killed by Jason on the cruise ship was a leftover scene from the original script, where this scene would take place in a glitzy New York nightclub instead. Back to Sugar Ray Julius for a moment. The Julius character was a holdover from the original script as well. Writer-director Rob Hedden originally envisioned the scene taking place in Madison Square Garden, where Julius and Jason would engage in a boxing match before Jason eventually punches his head off. Actor Vincent Craig Dupree was actually really punching Kane Hodder because he was a big tough guy wearing plenty of padding. So to make it look real, Kane Hodder told him to just go all out and actually punch him. Now the flip side of all of this is even if they were able to shoot the scene in Madison Square Garden, how far can you really go with putting Jason in a situation like that before it becomes absolutely ridiculous?
No! Hey! Go to your room!
Big questions, we'll never know. Number 3, let's go to Vancouver. Look, let's just call out the elephant in the room.
Back the fuck off!
This movie should be called Jason Takes a Boat.
You son of a bitch!
We didn't get much New York. Paramount decided to change the menu. No guilt, no creativity, no Statue of Liberty, no trust, liar. It's so unfortunate that so many plans for the film fell apart. During the production, many of the cast and crew themselves began calling the movie Jason Takes Vancouver. But this is of course because Vancouver doubled for New York in various scenes due to the budgetary reasons, as Paramount refused to the budget and extensive filming locations in New York. Except for 2 days of filming, and that was in Times Square, all of the scenes in the docks, the sewers, the alleys, and the diner were filmed in Vancouver. The thing that I think about at times is, okay, you have most of the film on a boat. Well, the boat scenes could have been better. The claustrophobia, the uncertainty around every corner. Jason could have had at least 2, if not 3, better stalking killing scenes. I think that would have helped the movie overall in the fans' eyes with the sting of the 70% to 30% split between boat and land.
And you blew it! You blew it!
This could again be because they were trying to compensate on the fly with less and less things that were going to be filmed on land. In the scene where Jason reaches through the porthole and grabs Rennie, Jensen Daggett was reportedly really terrified. It's because her face was just inches away from a large and very sharp piece of glass that had become stuck in the window frame, and Kane Hodder was unknowingly pulling her towards it. Ironically, when I think of the runtime, this film feels pretty quick, but at 100 minutes, this was the longest running time of any of the Friday the 13th films, a record that it would hold until the release of Friday the 13th in 2009, the reboot film, which is only 6 minutes longer than this one if you count the Killer Cut extended version. Number 4. Jason. Kane Hodder returns as Jason, and the expectations were pretty damn high in my opinion. He killed it, literally, in Part 7, The New Blood. Great scenes, tons of intimidation, and tons of stunts. A lot of division in Part 8 starts with his look. As always, the look of Jason was changed from the previous film. But the thing of it is, this look had some big differences. Number 1, no spine and bones visible. That was one of the most amazing aspects of Jason in Part 7, was that look of his spine and bones being exposed. Number 2, in Part 7, Jason was blown up at the end in a nuclear blast that was more powerful than it needed to be and hotter than Stacy Keibler and Elizabeth Debicki's leg power that could transcend the bounds of reality.
Baby!
In other words, his outfit was burned and barely there. In 8, he's got one that is pretty much intact except for some leg rips. What? Oh, and let's talk about the moist factor. Can someone get my man a towel? I mean, he needs to dry up a little. He was so wet that in the subway scene when Sean pulls the emergency brake and Jason falls down, I thought he was going to slide all the way back to Crystal Lake. We're talking about slip and slide to 13th. I mean, he was outside in New York. Wouldn't the air start to dry him off a little? I get it. He was underwater for a year, and so they wanted his look to be wet and also decomposing. But come on, let's be real.
You're cocked, locked, and ready to rock.
I will say that the mask looks good on him. Part 8 actually has one of the better masks in the franchise. It fits Kane great, and it doesn't look silly. I'm looking at you, Freddy vs. Jason. All in all, Kane was great, and still had this presence that is very unique to his portrayal of Voorhees. The head movements, the breathing, the walk, it all works tenfold. The crazy thing about Kane, though, was he almost didn't return as Jason. The studio was looking for a Canadian actor to play Jason for the role.
Bullshit!
Ken Kirzinger was considered to play Jason. Kane Hodder was determined to convince Paramount to hire him again, but to his surprise, they felt he wouldn't be interested to reprise his role. Ken would instead play Kane's stunt double in the movie, especially that scene in the diner, and eventually would replace Kane in Freddy vs. Jason in 2003.
Bullshit!
Thank goodness Kane came back. He was one thing about this film that definitely did work. Number 5, Finale and Legacy. We have seen a ton of different ways that the filmmakers have decided to defeat, or quote-unquote kill, Jason in past films. It's not easy to pull off, and this time is no different. 3 was pretty good. 4 was a great way to stop Jason and kill him. 6 was a nice way to pay homage to the original, and 7 had studio interference troubles of its own. Part 8 did something unique to its story, so on that level it's a win. The problem is when we get the young Jason part. I mean, didn't the toxic waste melt him? I'm sure Sean was thinking, come on man, melt this motherfucker so me and my girl can go to Applebee's. But seriously though, the ending was a reach by the director to do something supernatural. After this film's disappointing results at the box office, Paramount decided to sell the rights to the Jason Voorhees character, though not the Friday the 13th film series, to New Line Cinema. This makes Jason Takes Manhattan the last feature produced by Paramount until the 2009 remake Friday the 13th, which was possible because they still had the rights to the first 8 movies. New Line released only 3 other sequels, Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, and Freddy vs. Jason in between. Paramount decided they wanted to jump ship on Jason and move on.
You son of a bitch!
All of those years in the 80s with some decent profits and great moments from the franchise, but the time had come. In general, the slasher subgenre was out of steam, and even the mighty Freddy Krueger was feeling the effects of diminishing returns. Same to be said with Halloween. Michael Myers had just returned in 1988, and then in Halloween 5 in 1989, but the peak was already over. There are many fans of Friday the 13th Part 8. They love the cheesiness and the punk rock vibe that it gives off at times. Don't get me wrong, I can have fun with it myself from time to time, but I can't help but sometimes wonder what could have been if everyone, mainly Paramount, was on board to make this film work the best that it could with a premise that actually could have been really neat to see play out. At the end of the day, Friday the 13th Part 8 got horror fans losing their shit like Julius when he said,
Take your best shot. Motherfucker.
and lost his damn head. And we as fans must deal with it in our own way. You have to ask yourself, is Friday the 13th Part 8 a fun movie, even with all of its pivots? Did it betray what you wanted in the film? That is a question only you can answer. As always, this video is not here to make you love Jason Takes Manhattan, or to hate it. It's simply a discussion to highlight the history and aspects of it, good or bad, with you, the viewer. So what do you think? Are you a fan of Friday the 13th Part 8? If so, tell us why. If not, let's discuss why you hate Friday the 13th Part 8. If you haven't hit the like button for more content, please do. If you're not subscribed to the Nightwatch Zone, this is the time to do it. Do it and become part of this fantastic movie community where you'll never love and talk about movies the same. If you like this video, check out some of my other Why You Hate videos and other content here, and I'll see you there. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Nightwatch. Peace.